Imagine for a moment that you wake up on a seemingly normal day in a rustic small town. Rumor has been going around that the town is going to be destroyed, but nothing has been confirmed. As you go about your day with a feeling of impending doom, out of nowhere your suspicions are confirmed. The town, your home, will be torn down tomorrow, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I think we can all agree this feeling of helplessness would be pretty terrible. However, for the people of one small town, this horrible hypothetical became a reality. Back in 1814, Baltimore County, Maryland, USA, construction began on the town of Warren. The town was just 2 miles east of neighboring Cockeysville and 20 miles north of Baltimore City. With a small population of around 900 residents by the 1920s, life was simple for the people of Warren. Most of them worked in the local mills, producing silk, cotton, textiles, flour, and grains. The town only had a few buildings, those being the 3 churches, a post office, a public school, the mills, and around 100 homes. Even for the time, the town was incredibly small. Just a few miles away lies Loch Raven Dam. Connecting to the Gunpowder River, the dam was built in 1881 as another way to supply Baltimore City with fresh water. In addition to the dam, the city and neighboring Baltimore County got their water from Lake Roland. However, the lake's water had a terrible reputation of being polluted, and generally was not trusted. Because of this, the city decided to expand the dam in 1908 by adding a much larger upper dam. Construction was completed in 1914, increasing the dam's water supply up to 1.5 billion gallons. Around the same time, Baltimore's population began rising due to new job opportunities. For reference, the city's population of 558,000 in 1910 increased to 734,000 just 10 years later in 1920. This growing population's need for fresh water could not be sustained by the dam alone. Another solution was needed. Back in Warren, some began to worry. Knowing about the water shortage, it became clear that the dam would need to expand. Since the dam was only a few miles from Warren, the only real way forward was through the town. In addition to this, most of the buildings were built in low-lying valleys adjacent to the dam. Soon the inevitable became obvious. The people of Warren waited, until eventually, in 1922, they were forcefully removed by the order of city officials. What ultimately happened was the head members of Warren Manufacturing Company struck a deal with Baltimore City, who purchased the rights to destroy and eventually flood Warren. See, Warren wasn't just a regular town. It was actually a company town owned by Warren Manufacturing, the company that ran the mill operations. Company towns themselves are a whole different controversial issue, but the idea behind them is that a private corporation owns not only the manufacturing facilities in a town, but also the homes and other buildings too. That meant that Warren Manufacturing Company could sell all the houses without the consent of their residents. Most, if not all, of the residents simply had to move on, accepting the fact that they would get no compensation whatsoever. Even amidst the unfortunate circumstances though, the long period of build-up gave residents ample time to prepare. After the plans had been set, the town was destroyed, and by 1922 it was flooded, expanding Loch Raven Dam and turning the town of Warren into a reservoir. This alone increased the water supply from 1.5 to 23 billion gallons, more than enough to supply the Baltimore area. Today, the town is little more than a distant memory, if that. The reservoir, on the other hand, lives on, being enjoyed as a hiking and fishing spot by many. Near the deep waters of the reservoir, many describe the rusty flagpole from Warren's old schoolhouse that could be seen when the water level was low. The infamous spot was dubbed Schoolhouse Cove, but eventually the metal rusted and decayed, and this too was lost to time. As of 2023, all that remains are 4 small houses that belonged to company management at the time. Ironic, considering the way they sold out the people of Warren for their own benefit. Despite the questionable manner in which it was built, it would be difficult to find someone who thinks the construction of the reservoir was not worth it. After all, the reservoir has improved the lives of millions in the city and surrounding county by providing them with fresh drinking water. It also benefits local wildlife, offering them a home away from human activity. So even if many were displaced and exploited by its construction, the unequivocal benefit Loch Raven offers today makes this easy to overlook, especially so since Warren's destruction occurred over 100 years ago. However, once you think about it, the potential for abuse with this kind of system is concerning. As an example, in 1997, Suzette Kilo purchased a small house in the quiet neighborhood of Fort Trumbull in Long Island, New York. Nearby, the pharmaceutical supergiant Pfizer constructed a local production plant. Pfizer ultimately decided that building offices in the area to accompany the plant was a worthwhile investment. However, there was one problem. There was no free space. Pfizer then turned to the city government for help. Through some legal trickery and a few loopholes, they decided that they could make some space by allowing Pfizer to build atop the homes in Fort Trumbull. The reason Pfizer could do this was due to a concept called eminent domain. Eminent domain essentially allows the government to seize private property for public use. The two key points of eminent domain are firstly, that the project must offer a clear benefit to the public, and secondly, that there must be just compensation for those whose property has been taken. This is a seemingly fair idea. Sometimes public buildings are needed to maintain or improve quality of life, and sometimes the best spots for these facilities lie on private property. The issue comes when the system is abused. Suzette Kilo saw the clear abuse of the system by Pfizer and decided to challenge them in a court of law. The case, Kilo v. New London, saw the prosecution argue that Pfizer's offices would not serve the public. Rather, they only served to make the company's profit margins larger, violating the first rule of eminent domain. Even if a majority of people seemed to agree with this sentiment, the case was ruled in the favor of New London, and Fort Trumbull was destroyed shortly after. The ironic part, Pfizer never ended up building the offices they had planned. This case set the precedent that eminent domain didn't just apply to the construction of reservoirs, power plants, and other public facilities, but essentially any private company that could argue it would benefit the public by constructing offices or factories. The differences between Fort Trumbull and Warren are at first quite striking. Clearly, corporate offices do not serve the public, and clearly a public water source that supplies millions with clean drinking water does. However, the similarities come when considering the costs of these projects. In both cases, everyday people had their lives uprooted. Their childhood home, their first home, their children's homes, their gardens, parks, local businesses, places of worship, etc., all places with immense sentimental value, were sacrificed. And sentimental value is a hard thing to put a price tag on. Because of this, it is important to recognize the sacrifices made by those who uprooted their lives to improve everyone else's. And this doesn't just apply to Warren. In neighboring Carroll County, the Melville Mill was flooded to create Liberty Reservoir, not too long after Warren's destruction. There are thousands of instances of eminent domain nationwide, worldwide even, all of which should be appreciated. And if this power is abused, say something about it. It can make a real difference. According to the Institute for Justice, 44 instances of eminent domain abuse were blocked by citizen protesters since the Kilo case in 2005. I want to leave you with a quote about Warren, the town destined to be destroyed, published in the Baltimore Sun by an anonymous reporter in 1921. In the valley of the shadow of the flood, yet, for 100 years to come, men will remember that at the bottom of a 45-foot lake, a thriving settlement of mill workers once answered the factory whistle in the mornings, went to church, sent the youngsters to school, quarreled, voted, loved, and died.